Sens fans, welcome to Season 4, Episode 12 of the Senstennial Podcast, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. On this week's episode, we're going to discuss some injuries to some of Ottawa's key players, DeBrincat and Chabot being on hot streaks, and how Dorian's going to fill some of the gaps with the current roster. We'll also touch on ownership and some of the updates that have kind of come down the pipeline since we last talked about it. So we'll kick it off on the injury front, and there is a lot of names that you could talk about. The most recent ones were Tim Stützle, which is a major blow to the Sens, as well as Tyler Motte, who has been a reliable penalty killer and just like a good depth player for the Sens this season. So we'll kick it off with Matt first. I mean, aside from those two guys, you have Zub, JBD, Joseph, Norris. The list is long. A lot of guys out of the lineup. What do you think about Ottawa's injury situation at the moment?
I think it's bad karma. It's bad juju. I am not sure why this always sort of happens. When the team seems to be really getting going, there's just another obstacle that's thrown in the wrench that is our season. It obviously started with Norris, which I think a lot of people downplayed the significance of the Norris injury. And I know that Pinto has been serviceable as a second line center, but he's not there yet. And I do definitely look back to some of the comments that were made by some people saying, I wouldn't be surprised if Pinto overtakes Norris this year. And it's like, well, he did, because Norris got injured 5 games in. I look at where our defense is. As soon as there's an injury, it's been chaos. There hasn't been consistency there. And then now we don't have an outlook thus far, considering Stützle got injured in the game against the Ducks, where there was a snippet of the breakaway video that somebody caught him in a sling. That could be precautionary. Who knows? Let's really hope so. But losing him would be probably the nail in the coffin of any resurgence we hope to have. The Sens are currently 8 points out of a wild card spot, and they're 6-2-1 in their last 9 games. That's really hopeful. Things are going well, and they're going to be playing against some beatable teams these next few games coming up. Losing Tim Stützle is a big blow, not to be overshadowed. Obviously, like the Tyler Motte injury sucks too, but you look at the Tolvanen going on waivers, and I can't name more than 4 guys in Belleville that I would want called up to the Sens. And he would definitely be at the top of that list. And Dorian's asset / depth management is once again in question, because we're now behind the 8 ball significantly without those major guys.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'll get to you in a second there, Bennett, but another guy who's on waivers who the Sens passed on is Carson Kuhlman, who isn't a big name player or anything like that, but he's been kind of a steady defensive guy this season. And, the Sens just kind of need bodies right now who can play at the NHL level, because even in Belleville, they're dealing with a huge amount of injuries to some of their guys. And they've already called up Rourke Chartier, and that's one guy, but yeah, it's definitely a team that kind of needs some guys who have NHL experience. So that's another guy who I don't think is a world beater by any means, but it's just to have depth who can come in and play in an NHL role and just give you something without having to give up any assets. So yeah, but I'll pass it over to you, Ben, and same question. What do you think about the Sens and the injuries at this point?
It's starting to feel a little bit like deja vu. It feels like the Sens go through an injury crisis at every point the last couple of seasons. I remember being particularly pronounced last year. We had the COVID slump, right around the time that everyone on the team got infected. And then later in January, we missed a month or something where Norris was out. And this year, it's mostly been on the back end, but is spiraled into our forward core as well, with Timmy and Mott and Joseph all going down. I think that the Sens are getting some serious tests of their newfound depth. I mean, this team is deeper than it was last year. It can weather these injuries a little bit better. You have guys like Giroux and DeBrincat who can step up and who didn't even really need to step up necessarily. I mean, they've already been playing well in a top role, but more it's just like you have some guys that you can still rely on to generate some consistent offense. However, it's hard. I mean, the Sens we're hoping to be pushing for a playoff spot this year. The year did not start out that way, although the last couple of weeks have been kind of promising. And if you could string together a month's worth of results like that, then you could maybe start to think about a push. However, this injury crisis, I guess you could say, comes at a bad time for that, because it's at a time when the Sens are generating some momentum and getting some results together. Talbot got his first shutout as a Senator last night against Anaheim, so there's a lot of positive buzz at this particular moment in the Sens season. And I just hope that buzz does not get dissipated by just a lack of bodies, because that would be disappointing. Perhaps less disappointing than if the Sens were just bad and getting dunked on every night. But still, I mean, like all the hype that came into this season, you wouldn't want to see, a potential playoff push blunted by just wear and tear. That's not a fun storyline.
For sure. And we'll probably get to some of the ways that Dorion could maybe patch up the roster. I mean, easier said than done, but we'll get to that later in the episode. But for now, going back to what you said about DeBrincat, stepping up, and he has lately, he is on fire again. Earlier this season, he was on a 6-game point streak. He's now on another 6-game point streak. And recently 2 goals against the Ducks, both power play markers. Ottawa's power play stays hot. But for him, it's nice to see him bury chances. He said himself that second goal he scored, he's like, those weren't going in for me earlier this season. And he said he's just getting some fortunate puck luck now. And even the other power play marker where Giroux fed him and he had that open net to shoot at. There were 2 other times this season, at least that I can remember, where he had the exact same situation and he shot the puck and he either missed it or hit the post. So him actually burying that is probably very relieving for him, because he's like, I've had easy goals that I should have scored from the same spot and I missed. So to bury one, he's like, all right, I'm back. So that's good for him. And aside from him, Thomas Chabot, I believe he's had 11 points in his last 10 games. He's been on an absolute tear as well since coming back from his injury, and he looks like a completely different player, and the player that the Sens expected when they gave him that long-term big money contract. So on both of those fronts, I'll kick it back to you, Ben. And what do you think about both those guys really stepping up?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on DeBrincat first. And being a goal scorer, having a reputation as a goal scorer in the NHL is a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing in the sense of, it's a skill that not every player has. And that makes you a desirable player and a desirable commodity on the trade market in terms of free agency, what have you. However, there's expectations that come with that. And the expectation is that, if you're a goal scorer, then you score goals. Even the very best shooters, he's a guy who scored 40 goals in both of the last 2 seasons. That still means that, like, even if our hopes come true, he's a 40 goal scorer here in a sense, that still means there's hypothetically 42 games of the year where he wouldn't score a goal, if you assume, like a strict, 1 goal per game kind of like distribution. So that it's going to balance out. And when he starts off slow and he gets a couple goals here and there, but not too much just going in for him, that there's going to be times when it rains. And right now it is raining for DeBrincat. He, like you said, he's running a 16 point streak. He's playing well. He was already playing well. He just wasn't getting the puck luck, like you say. And it's easy to say that of players when they're not playing well, and maybe it isn't true. You're just kind of like projecting, or you're, trying to make excuses for them. This was like very obviously a case of like, this guy was getting good looks and he is a guy who shoots pucks, and just like the cosmic hockey god forces were just like in retrograde or something. Like, it is very obvious when you look at the kind of chances this guy was taking and was missing that like any other time you would expect us to go in. So I think that, you know, he's going to continue to play well. The goals are going to continue to go in. I think he will finish at least with 30 goals in his first season as Senator. He could easily hit 40. I mean, like, there is still a lot. The NHL season is long. It is probably too long in my opinion, but it goes on for a while, and you know, he can rack up a lot of goals still this season. And on Chabot, I mean, like, I wear my heart on my sleeve here. Like, I'm a big Chabot fanboy, always have been. He's got his jersey. This is a guy that, you know, that when he's on his game, he is, you know, an absolute rock on which this team is built. You know, before Sanderson, he was our one star defenseman. He was our one guy that when he was playing well could carry this team from the back end. And he's starting to do it again after, again, another slow start to the season on his end. But we're seeing Chabot now playing like the player that we know he is and that we know that he will continue to be for the Senators. So it's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, the DeBrincat thing is one thing. I look to Austin Matthews and like how he didn't score a lot at the start of this season. And it just, if you're not scoring as a goal scorer, nobody cares about you. It's like, oh, he hasn't scored 40 goals yet. Well, then I don't care. There was a lot of weird vibes about DeBrincat, especially, you know, people saying that he looked disinterested. He wasn't into the season. Like, is he going to want to stay? And then the trade proposals and all this stuff. And it's like, people, goal scoring takes time. Austin Matthews hasn't lit up the lamp just quite like he usually has. And, you know, he's still an exceptional player. Let the guy get used to his line mates and so on and so forth. I think Pinto Batherson and him are finally finding some real chemistry. It looked like they had some really dangerous chances against Anaheim. And I got to be honest, that Giroux pass yesterday against the Ducks was gross. And you have to think DeBrincat maybe saw that coming to him and said, I'm not one-timing this. I will have the time to just put it where it needs to go, as opposed to absolutely like plastering it. And odds are he would score it, but those the intrusive thoughts of like, let's send it 300s. You know, I'm happy to see him getting going in terms of scoring, but it's not to say he hasn't been a productive and like offensively gifted player, as well as he's been actually like a bit of a surprise defensively. Mm-hmm. He works hard and he doesn't give up on plays, which I really appreciate. Yeah. I saw some people saying, you know, I wish we got Fiala after the LA Kings game. And I was like, yes, but Fiala's like, what, 29 now? Like, he's an old fart. And he's just going to get older, and that contract's going to get older. Just wait. Like, things aren't going to be as bad as they seem. And then with Chabot, I mean, we knew the guy was a top 2 defenseman. There was no doubt about that. It's just he started slow. And now he's, as you said, he has 11 points in 10 games or something like that. My fantasy team loves it. He's been a rock star there. And he looks awesome as well. You know, he's taken the mantle right back from Jake Sanderson as our best defenseman. But there was no doubt in my mind that it was still Chabot, even when he was playing poorly. Can that be said maybe next year even? Who knows? Because... You know, Dom at The Athletic released some player cards, and Sanderson, as a rookie, is already playing like a $6 million player, which is pretty incredible if you ask me. And I think it's a really cool sort of analysis that you can go and look and see that most of Ottawa's players are playing above their pay grade. Brady Tkachuk is playing like a $12 million player.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so awesome. I love that. And it really shows that, he's shown up and been such an exceptional part of this season. And, even with Chabot starting slow, he's still worth more than his contract is. I'm really happy to see Chabot come back to form, because it means we have that strength on the back end.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it projects well for the future. We just need to get Zub down, get Brandstrom long term. We got 4 big pieces there, and then we just figure out the rest. All vibes, baby. All vibes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing people forget too is, well, first of all, you said like DeBrincat is playing very well, and I have no issues with him coming in playing how he has. And the comparisons to Fiala are very odd to me, because I don't know, if you watch both those players, I think you come away more impressed with DeBrincat, and DeBrincat's 24. Like, he's had 2 40-goal seasons and one season where he was on pace for over 40 goals, but it was just a shortened season. So for a guy who's 24 to already have almost 3 40-goal seasons under his belt is ridiculous. And I definitely think the Sens should sign him long-term as soon as the opportunity arises. But going back to what I started this thought with, when you look at the roster, he was on a line with Josh Norris and Drake Batherson to start the year. Or sorry, Claude Giroux and Tim Stützle. But now if the lineup was healthy, he'd be with Norris and Batherson. That's what I'm getting at. And on that line, all 3 of those guys could shoot the puck. And when you look at the power play, Josh Norris is your go-to option on the power play, at least last season, right? And so there's a lot of opportunities where guys are covering DeBrincat because they know he's going to be the shooter. Whereas if you had Josh Norris in your lineup on the power play, at 5-on-5, he's a guy where you need somebody to cover him as well. It's not like, DeBrincat's the only guy on the roster who can shoot. No, you need to have both those guys covered if they're in the lineup. This isn't a team that's like Alex Ovechkin, where it's like, okay, where it's going on the power play. So anyway, just that to say that I think the injuries to some of our key players also are going to affect his production by making him be more of a center of focus for other teams' coaching staffs to hone in on when it comes to defensive assignments.
Hockey fans, light the lamp this winter with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers can bet just $5 pre-game moneyline on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now using promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for listening or watching so far. And if you've enjoyed the show, please consider following us on social media. We're on Twitter at Senstennial, Instagram at the Senstennial, and you can also find us on Reddit, Discord, and all your social media platforms that you enjoy. So thanks for listening, and we'll get to the next topic on the agenda, and that is ownership updates. It's been quite a while since we've talked about this, but there have been a number of things that have come out about the ownership updates. We've heard that the NHL wants Ryan Reynolds involved in some capacity, no matter who the winning bid is. We've heard different prices that the team could be selling for, upwards of $1 billion or maybe even $2 billion, according to Bruce Garriock. So we'll talk about that. And also lately about the data room walkthrough stuff. So all interesting tidbits, and I'll swing it over to you, Bennett. And, what are your thoughts on the latest and greatest of the ownership updates?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Well, the Sens, the sale of the Ottawa Senators is plugging away quietly behind the scenes. We have, according to Ian Mendez's most recent article on the subject, a few potential owners that have separated themselves from the pack in terms of likely ability to lead a consortium. We have the Kimmel family, led by Jeffrey Kimmel, one front runner. These are former minority owners of the Pittsburgh Penguins, so we have some baked-in familiarity with Bettman and with the league, which definitely helps that cause. The same could be said of Michael Andlauer, who's the current minority owner of the Habs. Similar situation. This is somebody who's known to the league and to Gary Bettman, who's closely involved as he is in all sales or prospective sales of NHL teams. That's another serious front runner. Other names that have been thrown out there, Andre Desmarais, Patrick Dovigi. These are guys with deep pockets who have had rumored to have an interest, but are seen as maybe outside bets at this point. I think any local owner is likely to be a minority partner. We've talked about potential property development empires here in Ottawa, like Minto, wanting to get involved. I think that's possible, but according to what I've been reading and hearing, again, would likely be as a minority shareholder. One thing is common across all of these is that downtown arena is going to be absolutely key. Everybody agrees to this. Everybody knows LeBreton has to happen. And that's going to be absolutely key to the successful sale and long-term future of this team. One of the next big milestones to come up, you touched on the data room. This is an interesting thing that was new to me, but which makes complete sense as part of the bidding process. As that, the NHL is looking to give the serious ownership candidates access to the Sens data room, which is a bit of a misnomer. It's less of a room these days, more of a software, obviously, which houses all of the privileged data that prospective owners would want to know before getting into a $100 million purchase. That includes audited financial statements for the Senators going back at least 5 years. It includes contract details for all personnel, including players, coaches, and staff. It includes the terms and conditions of sponsorship deals, detailed business operation info, as well as information about the Sens charitable entities. So that's a lot of information. Any prospective bidder would be expected to show legitimate good faith interest by putting a deposit down or any other kind of marker to indicate that they're serious about their intent to purchase the team. Before getting access to the data room, they would also be expected to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, because that is obviously very privileged information that could be useful to other teams, our competitors. So anyway, just a lot of things chugging away behind the scenes in terms of the value of the ultimate sale. That's going to be negotiated, as we know, by Galatioto Sports Partners, a New York financial firm that has experience in brokering these kinds of sales. According to Mendez, he suspects that the sale would be likely close to, but just this side of $800 million US. So less than, what the Pittsburgh Penguins sold recently for, around $900 million off the top of my head. However, more than Seattle, a franchise was purchased for about $650 million. So I would not be surprised at all if we saw the ultimate sale price of the Sens split the difference between those two numbers. I think 1 billion, 2 billion. I mean, you're getting into, freaking like Barcelona, Real Madrid numbers there. That's not realistic at all. And lastly, just on Ryan Reynolds, again, you mentioned this is a player that is seen as a serious player by the league and by Bettman. They in fact want Ryan Reynolds to be involved in some capacity as likely as a minority shareholder as part of a bigger consortium. You can see why, obviously, the league would want that to happen. Having somebody with star power and PR Riz to come in and take ownership, or sorry, not ownership, but be the public face of the ownership group in Ottawa. It's a good opportunity to build up the reputation and like the public profile of what is one of the NHL's smaller markets right now, but which has big market potential, as we all know, and the possibility for me personally of having what I wanted all along, just a faceless consortium of just random rich people who are not one eccentric billionaire, but which have some checks and balances in place, having someone like Ryan Reynolds to be the public face. I mean, we all thought, maybe hoped that Alfredsson might be that person, but I think that he would be much more comfortable on the hockey ops side than on the ownership side. And I think that, if Ryan Reynolds or, the Kimmel family or any of these people, as soon as they get their feet wet and they get into this new entity that they own, I mean, hiring Alfredsson to come on in some hockey ops related capacity, I'm sure would be at the very top of their list of things that they can do to ingratiate themselves to Ottawa and to Sens fans. And I'm sure it's something that they would be considering. So all in all, I think this is good news, and happy to pass it over to you guys for your thoughts.
Yeah, that was great. That was a good rundown of everything we needed there. But other Matt, if you want to add anything to Bennett's little spiel there, then go for it.
It's definitely hard to follow up. I will say that. I'll definitely hit you with opinion, and I'll let Bennett spit the facts. I have to say I'm pretty impressed by all of the media that's covering the Sens. One of the main pages on The Athletic is the Sens for sale, and there are a couple articles covering it. It's a big deal. And I think it's a really good indicator of the NHL wanting to move forward and market themselves appropriately by literally telling any ownership group that they want Ryan Reynolds involved. Mm-hmm. And it's a slam dunk. I mean, Ottawa fans, yeah, we would love if Alfredsson is involved. Alfredsson probably doesn't have the cashola to be involved. He can definitely be a spokesperson, but I agree he should be more on the hockey operation side, and so all of that. But having a person like Ryan Reynolds involved brings not only the notoriety to the team, but the league itself. Nobody cares about the division that Wrexham FC play in, but they care about that team. Everybody knows that team's name now. And suddenly when you put Ryan Reynolds with the Ottawa Senators, that's a big deal. And of all of the people that you had mentioned, Mendez sort of pointed to Andelauer selling stock in his company to the tune of, I believe it was $80 million. His net worth is currently roughly 1.2 billion, and he did something kind of sneaky, if I recall correctly. He was selling his stake in the Habs to Desmarais, who if everybody remembers correctly, they were involved in the bidding in 2017 on the LeBreton Flats. So that sort of takes out one possible bidder, because who wouldn't want to be involved in the Habs, especially if your last name's Desmarais. But all this to say, I think it's really exciting. There's not a chance in heck that the Ottawa Senators sell for $1 billion. And that if you want to ask why they would get to 2, literally, I have no idea where this number came from, other than the fact that an arena, yes, it's going to cost, it might cost $500 million, and the location of it, all that. But the Senators as a franchise are not worth $2 billion. And anybody saying that is a crock. So 800 million is still the number that I'm comfortable saying that's probably what the Sens are going to sell for. And if they do, that's great. And I still maintain that maybe the buyers get a discount on the Senators, and the Melnyk sisters stay involved somehow as a legacy piece. And all that would be great. It would just come full circle, and it would be a nice testimony to Melnyk keeping the team in Ottawa and all that jazz. But all of the hullabaloo about Ottawa moving to Quebec City or Houston or there was not a chance that was ever going to happen. And, now the team is the damsel, and all of the possible owners are knights, and they're lining up because they want the Ottawa Senators.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll get to the last topic here, and that's kind of going to back to where we started. And it's, what does Pierre Dorion do to fix the roster? And I know a lot of criticism could be thrown around like, hey, he should have predicted that the Sens would need some defensive help before the season started. I think everyone kind of knew that. Whether there were trades out there to make or not, that's another story, but people knew that that's what he needed to do to really improve the blue line of this roster. Now we're seeing, there's issues with the forward depth. And so it comes around to, what could Pierre Dorion do? Whether it's trade, it's call up, seeing if there's anybody in free agency or playing in Europe, I don't know, who can come into the NHL and help give you some more solid depth to make this roster better. And I'll kick it over to Bennett. And Bennett, what do you think that Dorion could do to try and fix the roster in the interim until they get some of their key players back?
It's a tough question because of the timelines of some of the injuries here. Zub is expected to miss, 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, that's not the kind of time frame where you need to go out and find a Zub replacement because, by the time that any deal was worked out or any signing could be implemented, he'd be back. And so that's kind of, that would be kind of superfluous. I think what the real proactive thing to be doing would be looking for, your Hamonic and Zaitsev replacement, finding the person who's going to step up and fulfill like a second or third D pairing role on the right-hand side. We've talked about this a lot in the podcast this season already because we know that's where the hole is. I'm sort of the opinion that for the purposes of this season, I kind of don't really want to see them make any moves, any like big moves. Maybe like the most I'd want to see is like maybe like some of those guys, let some people from Belleville have a chance. We've seen Thompson have a bit of a role. I think we could see some more of him. We've seen Brandstrom get the odd trial on the right-hand side. I think I'm happy to see more of that as well. In terms of like a trade for somebody to fill that position, I just feel like right now we'd be trading from a position of weakness, and I think the market would be more amenable in the off season. And much as we all want the Sens to take a step forward this season, I think we're starting to see that maybe already. I wouldn't want to make a panic move right now to fix a hole in a season that we know, even if our wildest dreams had come true and we were a playoff team this year, we know that like this isn't like our year. Like this isn't the year where we need to absolutely make sure like it's second, third round finals or bust. Like we're not at that point yet. I'm happy to, well, happy is not the right word. I'm content to know that there is a problem on the back end that needs to be fixed without breaking the bank at this particular moment to fix it until we know a little bit more. Now, one thing that I am worried about is Josh Norris, because, he has been out for almost 2 months now. As far as I know, we don't really have a timetable for his return. We've mentioned before, this is his shoulder, an area that he has had previous injuries that have kept him out for a not insignificant amount of time in previous seasons. I think there is a 0% chance that Norris's career with the Senators could be cut short by, if not this particular injury, by injury in general. And I think as a wise GM would start to think about some long-term contingencies for that eventuality. And I would hope that Dorion is doing the same.
I kind of see your point there with when it comes to Norris. I also agree. It definitely makes you consider where things are at with him. I know he's been skating a lot more recently, and that's definitely a plus. The thing that frustrates me to no end, obviously, and we can talk about it till the cows come home, is the fact that they should have went out and gotten some D help, and not relied on aging veterans who probably aren't in the league if they're not on the Ottawa Senators. With that said, and it goes back to the Tolvanen conversation, you have players, you've maxed out your cupboards essentially for your depth of NHL players that probably aren't in the league yet, but are ready to come up.
Mhm.
I mean, I love Sokolov. I like his vibes a lot. I just don't see him being an NHLer. I think he's got a lot to work on to do that. But he's one of those guys that probably should come up and get an extended look with all of these injuries. It's rough when all of these injuries happen, and you're not being gifted anything on the waiver wire. And Tolvanen's probably the closest thing you're going to get to being gifted something, an underperforming top pick who lit it up when they were younger and just couldn't find their footing in Nashville. Give them an opportunity, but I think Seattle's going to be a great opportunity for them. But it's just, to me, the Sens are kind of looking rough when it comes to some of their depth.
Yeah, and I won't get into, would the Sens trade this piece or that piece for this player? There have been reports out of Vancouver that, Brock Besser is available for as little as a second or third round pick. Ottawa doesn't have any thirds, so Dorion will give him a second. Bo Horvat apparently is available, according to LeBron. Contract talks. The Canucks offered him a contract a couple of weeks ago, wasn't accepted. Seems like they're at a bit of a standstill, so he's on the market. I think pending UFAs out of Vancouver, like Luke Schenn, are probably available. I've seen in the Habs world talk about Sean Monahan being available. He's having a much better season this year than he had with the Flames. So I've seen some talk about him being available and them retaining salary to trade him to someone. So I think there's definitely some players out there. I think Dorion is going to be a little handcuffed by the fact that he may be in one of those situations where you're dealing out of desperation and with a weak hand, and that's problematic, right? If the Sens had maybe one injury to Norris, the rest of their roster was healthy and they were on the same streak they are now, and maybe beat Montreal, and then they're more in that bubble for the playoff race, then maybe, they have a little bit more leverage in those trade negotiations. But at this point, it's kind of hard to see a fix immediately. I agree, giving Sokolov an extended look, no harm in doing that. Seeing what you can do internally to fix the roster for now. The thing I do like is that Ottawa's pro scouting has been criticized in the past, but they have Ryan Bonus on the staff right now. And I have a lot of faith and I guess just respect for him, just with what he's done with Pittsburgh and some of the gems he's found out of seemingly nothing depth players. So we'll see. We'll see what the Sens come up with, and hopefully they can get on the right track and maybe recover their position in the standings and get some key players back and go from there. But anyway, that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Really appreciate it. Like I said earlier, you can find us on all the different social media platforms. Please follow us on there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please consider subscribing. Really appreciate it. And always leave us some feedback if you have any questions you want us to answer in future episodes or anything like that. We always appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next one. Go Sens, go, and let's get some wins.